discussion format than anything else. But yeah, everyone who's here, thank you for coming. As everyone knows, the first of 3 events that Stanford Says No to War will be having this week, focused on ROTC, and with the ballot on Thursday and Friday this week being the relevant event. Tonight we are really lucky to have 3 members of the organisation's Veterans for Peace here actually, and our 2 speakers are sitting here. So this is Joe Sonak, and he was drafted into the Marines in 1969 during the Vietnam War. He served 5 months in Vietnam in 1970 and was discharged in 1971. And then next to him is Roy Nordblom, who was also in the Marines. He came to Stanford as an undergrad in 1977, was here for a couple of years, and dropped out to have adventures, as he says. Some of those adventures included 4 years in the Marine Corps and 4 years in the reserves. And he came back to Stanford as a mature age student and graduated, and that was in the early 90s. He had the opportunity to re-enlist in 92, but given that Operation Desert Storm had just started, his family especially didn't want him going off to war again, so he did re-enlist and left the service at that time. So we also have George Johnson here, who's come to bring Veterans for Peace materials, and they're on the table there if anyone's interested in having a look at them. The other thing that everyone might have seen on the flyer is that later on tonight we will air a short message that the author David Swanson sent us from Afghanistan. It was recorded overnight in Afghanistan.
Could I say a few things about this? First of all, there's a card here, and we do come and speak to classes and stuff. So take one of these cards and get a hold of us. This orange card is directly associated with Agent Orange, defoliant used in Vietnam, which is still killing people both in Vietnam and here. So sign one of these and leave it before you go. There's The Veteran, which is a national newspaper for Vietnam veterans against the war, and War Crimes Times, which is a national newspaper for Veterans for Peace. And then one of our most recent projects is the Golden Rule. This is a 30-foot catch that opposed the nuclear testing in the South Pacific and the Marshall Islands. It was finally seized by the government, sold, and was sunk in a storm in Humboldt Bay. We've salvaged it in the Senate boatyard in Eureka, being repaired. Take one of those if you want to go up sometime this summer and help refit a boat. You just get a hold of them and they'll let you come up. This is a Veterans for Peace brochure. This is what we subscribe to, but the reason I brought it because on the back there's a lot of organizations people can contact for veterans things, for anti-war things. So
thanks, George.
Take this stuff and
Roy, I think you said you thought a little bit about what you might talk about tonight. Did you want to kick us off?
Because I went to Stanford, I might have a unique perspective for you people, you know. And so if I talk too much, just let me know. I went to Stanford for 2 years. I dropped out and had adventures, and then I came back as an adult and finished up. In between those, I was supposed to be in class of 81. Actually, I went through graduation with all my contemporaries in 1981. I rented a gown. So I have photos of myself graduating in 1981, and I have photos of myself graduating in 1991. Actually, I had a degree by then. And so, anyways, it's kind of fun to tell young people that it's possible to stop out of school and come back later. And Stanford is open arms. So very good about that. While I was having my 10 years of adventures, I took evening classes. I was always taking some sort of evening class, no matter where I was. When I was in North Carolina, I took classes at East Carolina University. When I was stationed in Japan, I took classes at the University of Maryland. When I was in Korea, I took all these classes everywhere I went. And then when I came back to Stanford in '89, they actually accepted quite a lot of them. Stanford's very good policy. They really want to have a high percentage graduation rate, so they bend over backwards. Just something to know. When I went traveling, when I dropped out of Stanford and went traveling, I went to intentional communities. Does anyone know what intentional communities is? It was like hippie communes. Back in the 70s, there were still quite a few of those around, and I learned about things called like sustainability and living in community and tolerance for others and so on. And that was kind of a broadening experience for me. I was a hitchhiker. I traveled all around America. I've been to all the states. Got jobs probably in half of them. But I always concentrated on sort of the green things, sustainable things, working at organic farms and such, which was just a brand new idea back in the 70s. Stanford was very advanced. You know, Stanford was like this most amazing place. But still, the environmental movement hadn't been invented yet. Sustainability and it was still on the horizon. But I got a good earful of it back in the 70s because I just went out and traveled, right? And I decided I was, another thing, when I came to Stanford as a freshman, you have to have a special class that you take, a small class. I don't know what they call it now, it's freshman seminars or something. But the class that I got chosen by at random was Paul Ehrlich taught a class on population biology. And that was the year after he wrote his book called The Population Bomb? I think that's what it's called.
Explosion. Yeah.
Population Bomb. And so this guy he's really famous now. Paul Ehrlich, have you heard of him? He's a population biologist at Stanford. He kind of invented the whole environmental movement back in the early 70s. But it really affected me taking this class with this guy. And ever since then, I was an ardent environmentalist, even before it was really a movement. So it's kind of cool that Stanford brought that to me. You know, before the Save the Whales came out, it was my professor was talking about it. And so Stanford, the things you're learning today, someday you're going to look back and say, wow, I was there back when. Right? When I was a student at Stanford, I had to have a student job, and I needed to do something. And so I thought computers were going to be big. Before I came to Stanford, I took classes at the local junior college, and we learned Fortran and COBOL. We would type in, and they would punch these cards. We had these big stack of punch cards, and they're called Hollerith cards. Then we take the punch cards, we'd go put them in the computer. The computer would read them all, and that'd be our computer program. And it's like you'd have a 150 or 200 line program, you'd have 200 cards, right? That's what computers were like back in the 70s. And Stanford was sort of a hotbed. It was, and there was something called artificial intelligence that had just been invented in the early 70s. And so for my student job, I taught myself how to program in Lisp, which you guys don't even know what it is. It's a dead language now, but it was the first artificial intelligence programming language. And it turned out it was a very smart move. And I got jobs just like that. And AI was sort of the next big thing. You know, everybody thought that AI was going to be huge. It was going to be. It turns out that it wasn't. It was actually more difficult than anybody expected. And this other thing called the internet became the next big thing. But I still believe that AI really has some legs, has some future. But anyways, the point is that I was here at Stanford in the late 70s when AI was just being invented. And I have a long history. I've been doing AI computer programming for 30 years now. And it's cool, thanks to my Stanford connection, I know most of the people who started the field of artificial intelligence, personally as friends. You know, so it's a very cool thing. So like whatever you guys are studying now at Stanford, you have the opportunity 30 years from now to be able to say, yeah, I was at the very beginning of sustainability. I tell everybody, get into sustainability, it'll be big someday. You know? So that was just the few comments. When I was at Stanford, I was ardently anti-military. I thought the military was Cro-Magnon. They're idiots. It was a big waste of time and effort. But there were no wars. It was the Reagan years. It was peak military spending, and there was really no worries to the world. When I dropped out of college and went hitchhiking, I had no idea that I would end up in the military. It's like that was the last thing that happened. You know, I grew my hair long, and I went traveling, and I lived on communes. But after doing that for 3 years, I'd been to all the states. I'd done everything I'd ever wanted to do, and the military became an option. If I had known what the military was like before I went in, I wouldn't have done it. But I had sort of this idealistic version of the military. My father had been in the military, my uncles had been in the military, my grandfather had been in the military. We were a working class family, so everybody, as far back as forever, had all been in the military. And they all said, well, Roy, you're going to go in the military. Just on that, I'm going to Stanford. And so the point is that after being a hitchhiker and a loser for years and years and a college dropout, I thought that maybe the military would help me save up money and go back to Stanford and finally graduate. And so that was my also, I had been hitchhiking for 2 years, and I've been everywhere, and I wanted to travel around the world. So I joined the military for all the wrong reasons, to save money and to travel around the world. And by golly, I did. It turns out that when you're in the military, you get 30 days vacation every year. And for your vacation, you can fly for free on any military airplane going anywhere. It's called space available. As long as there's space available and your leave papers are okay, you can fly anywhere. And most of the guys would just go home and see mom and dad and the girlfriend. But me, I've been a hitchhiker for 2 years, and I want to travel. So I traveled all around the world. So each year for 30 days, I traveled around the world. So now I can say I've hitchhiked on 5 continents. And I saved my money. In the military, you can eat in the chow hall and eat for free. You can get your clothing for free. You can stay in the barracks for free. You can save all your money. But most of the young guys, they don't do that. They blow all their money immediately. Tattoos, prostitutes, alcohol, things that they shouldn't be buying. Most of the guys completely waste it. But me, I didn't. I maxed it out. In my 4 years in the Marines, I saved $25,000, which was a lot back in the 70s. As opposed to every other guy. There was nobody like me. Everybody else came out of the military broke or with no savings. But me, I did. And so I came back to Stanford and I spent 2 more years, and all that $25,000 went just like that. But I did it. I came back to Stanford. I graduated in '91 with a degree in computer science. Symbolic systems, actually, is the name of the degree. And so I'm a bad example to talk to kids about the military, because I had a great time. I traveled the world. I had wonderful experiences. There was no combat. I maxed it out. But I saw thousands and thousands of other young men who the machine rolled over them and crushed them. It crushes your spirit. It takes your money. It teaches you the wrong things. It glorifies war. A lot of the guys never quite get it. And they get brainwashed by the military, and they never kind of see what they're doing, and they're very into it. And so like you see these old men, these veterans, and they're all pro-war. It's like, dude, didn't you go through it? And how could you have not seen it? But a lot of guys just go right through it, and they're totally indoctrinated. My wife tells me that I have an unwashable mind, because the idea is that they really brainwash you. And it's like, it's not just when you go into boot camp. It's like every week, every month, all year long. It's all brainwashing. And it's hard to get through it without getting brainwashed. But I did. Actually, because of my experience as with the intentional communities and communes and so on, and I discovered the peace movement in the 70s when I was a hitchhiker. So when I joined the military in '84, I thought actually I was going to transform the military from the inside out. I donated my body to my government, and I was going to transform the military from the inside out, which is like the stupidest thing anybody could possibly think of doing. And I didn't. I was not successful.
So it's interesting you say. I mean, that's an argument that often gets made about ROTC, is that Stanford students are better than all other students, and so having more Stanford students in the military will, even if we don't like the institution right now, will make it a better institution. But
exactly,
it seems really naive to you.
The idea is that maybe we need some Stanford people in this giant institution to bring some rationality, to kind of rescue it and bring it to a higher level, and that's completely. I've tried that. So I guess I'm rambling. The point is that when I go and talk to the high school kids about the military, I tell them the truth, that I had a great time. I maxed it out, I saved money, traveled, but it's not going to happen to you unless you're a guy like me. And I'd already been hitchhiking for 2 years and dropped out of Stanford and so on. Went to MIT. The vast majority of the guys get completely crushed by it, and then your spirit is kind of crushed. I can't talk for the ROTC guys because they're officers. And then you have this whole officer corps that sits on top of the enlisted. And the enlisted are sort of the oppressed group. They're usually the ones from the ethnic minorities or disadvantaged peoples, and they're oppressed by sort of the officer corps. So I really can't talk much about that.
Do you think the age at which you entered the military had an impact? Do you think, so for example, there's the ROTC is kind of, the other alternative is kind of OCS, Officer Candidate School model, where people would go through their 4-year undergraduate education first and then do 4 months of officer training, rather than do them at the same time and have to sign up when you're 18. This way you sign up when you're 22 or 23, or obviously even later. Do you think that's a meaningful difference in time, kind of having the time from when you're 18 to 22? I don't know, it sounds like from your experience.
Well, most of the guys that in the enlisted ranks, most of them, they're 18, 19 years old. Like they've just barely got out of high school, they got a GED, and they're in trouble back home, and they have nothing to do, they have no prospects, so they join the military. Most of the guys have never been away from home, they don't know how to wash their own clothes, they don't know how to do a checkbook. Most of these guys are just complete callow youth. Right? That's actually what my job became in the military. I was a training NCO, and my job was to teach these young guys basic competencies of life, how to keep a checkbook, how to do your own laundry, and so on. And then I also taught classes on leadership and military stuff. But my experience was that I had been in Stanford for 2 years, and I'd been a hitchhiker for 2 years when I went in. So I was the old man of the platoon to start with. You know, I was way more experienced than those kids. The officers have a similar advantage. They've already gone through college, and then suddenly they're thrown into a leadership position. So they're older and more mature than the young guys. But a lot of those first lieutenants who just came out of college, right out of ROTC, they're not much. How much experience can you get when you're 20 years old? So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. Joe, do you have any comments on what Roy said?
Can I just wrap up? And so I feel terrible telling about my experience in the military while Joe's sitting here, because he was in the Vietnam War and he saw things and they make you do things that just I didn't get any of it. I was anti-war before I went in. A lot of guys become anti-war on the way out because of what they see. So
you might not have gotten that, but you're not understanding what that is. And what that is essentially the same things that keep everybody away from this meeting. They tear the posters down. Nobody's speaking up against the dominant paradigm. Nobody's talking about possibilities out there. And that's where I want to go, but to answer it even before that, you made me think of an ethicist. He's a good 50 years old or more, or I should say, his years were, I don't even exactly know, but we'll call it 70 years ago, but his name was Lewis Mumford. And I remember the books, I think it was like titled The Myth of Man and Machine, The Pentagon of Power. Interesting words there to play with, and what was he exactly talking about? But to sort of sum it up as succinctly as I can, is essentially the pharaohs had as much power as Barack Obama, because the machine is man. The ability to work together as a machine, bring together tens of millions of men, women, and you use it as you would a machine. The pharaohs did it. The U.S. Army does it. It's no different after 5,000 years. And that's what Roy inspired me on that one. That was Lewis Mumford. I want to plant some ideas, and we can talk about it or we can ignore them, but I'm anti-military. If anything, what we need is a citizen army. We don't need an officer class. Yeah, we need some trained people to organize the generals, but essentially, if we want to be a democracy, if we want to think of power as coming from the bottom, we got to get rid of the standing armies, as the forefathers recognized. There's no other way around it. First, The moment you sign a military contract, all your constitution rights disappear. You don't have any rights when you join the military. You hear about military justice, or the justice system, military justice system. That's the biggest oxymoron there is out there. Make no mistake about that. And there is no getting out of the contract. You sign up for 4 years, and whoops, they can even extend you another 4 years, because that's in your contract too. No matter how much you want to get out of it, there's no way you can get out of it without going to jail. And so, I mean, that's a form of indentured servitude, slavery, call it what you want. It's unacceptable in a country where if the citizens think the country is worth defending, then they'll go out there and defend it. Stanford is part of the military-industrial academic complex. Make no mistake about that. You got the Hoover Institute here. You got SLAC. You got any number of big-time science grants coming out of the top places, and you probably can mention some more. There's strings attached. What are the strings attached to ROTC? Are they telling you them? I don't think so. You don't know what you're getting to it. The United States, the people of the United States thought they were helping the people of Libya just now by saying no planes should be flying. And how many people have we killed already? Innocents, civilians. It's there already. You don't know what you're getting into it. Because the message that the media gets to you people is for your consumption. The reasons the United States and NATO's bombing NATO, they're not telling us. But it probably has something to do with oil.
You think so? Joe, on the not knowing what you're getting, when you join the ROTC, you actually become a member of the reserve military. So if you decide, I don't want to be an ROTC anymore, they can put you on active duty as an enlisted person. If you go through ROTC and take all this take money and stuff towards your education, you can get money all the way up to a PhD. But if later on, like a number of officers did during the first Gulf War, you decide you don't want to be a military officer anymore, you don't want to be part of the killing machine, the courts rule that the military could make you give that money back with interest. There was a doctor in North Carolina who had been in the Air Force, and he had gotten something over $100,000 because he used all these military things to become a doctor. And by the time they got through, he had to pay back almost $200,000. Now, he was a doctor, so he probably, that probably wasn't bad for his economics, but say he'd been a guy who didn't want to be an officer anymore and went out and got a job managing a Kmart, then they may find it difficult to pay that money back.
Okay, so the third point is having college-trained officers will better the caliber of the officer class. I can ask you, show me the evidence. Is there any evidence out there? I haven't explained it. I haven't heard it explained to me. I'm 65 years. I don't recall any officer class resigning, and officers can resign. They're not quite indentured servants as the lower enlisted ranks are. I haven't heard of officers resigning. I've heard of a few State Department people resigning because of this last war. I haven't heard of any general resigning. I haven't even heard of any support for something like the current director of the VA, Chazinski or something like that. 8 years ago, he was painting a picture that, hey, if we invade Iraq, it's going to take 500,000 people, troops, occupation troops, to maintain the peace. Well, they didn't want to hear him, and they booted him out. Did any of the officer class come to his defense? Certainly there were some ROTC officers up there. Nobody came to his defense. Show me any evidence that the reasons you need Stanford trained ROTC officers out there is because it would give a better class of officers. And then once again, lastly, we are up against bucking the dominant paradigm. No matter how many hard-knocking facts we put out there, people will not accept that because everything has been drilled into you 1,000 times from the machine already. And you're not about to change your perceptions. I mean, how many billboards do you see? Well, you know, what color underwear do you need to wear this year? What kind of blue jeans do you need to wear? What kind of car do you need to drive? All that is drilled into you. And not too many people rebel against that. And that was that the troop coherency, battlefield coherent troops you need. You need some tightness. That's what the military relies on, conformity. And by gosh, we get conformity from the first day we step into kindergarten. Is that when it happened? Line up, don't make any noise. Oh, you're embarrassing me, you guys make so much noise. You're telling that to 3-year or 5-year-olds? You know, the epitome of absurdities back then. Yet we get it all our life, conform, conform, conform. And so I hope I gave some talking points. Thank you.
Do you want to open it up to questions? Does anyone have any questions for Roy and Joe?
Well, can I say one more thing about ROTC at Stanford? I didn't even mention that because that's what we're here for. I'm telling my story. Is that I was at Stanford in 1977 and ROTC had already been kicked off campus just a few years before then. But there were still a number of students who were Stanford students who were still in the ROTC program. One of them was one of my graduate student TAs in one of my classes. And I can't remember the name. I want to find the guy's name. But he had been in ROTC and had tried to get out. He had had a change of heart. And they were going to force him to go into the enlisted ranks, even because he had accepted this money to be a student at Stanford. And so he was kind of caught in the machine. And I just remember this because this is something that he was a TA of mine. And then there was another person that I remember back in the day who was also in ROTC. He lived at Escondido Village. He must have been married. And that ROTC had been, they got rid of it at Stanford, and so he had to go to Berkeley. And it was this huge problem for him. He had to go to Berkeley every weekend or whatever for his drills and so on. And so I knew 2 people back then, and both of them had serious problems with it. I don't think ROTC is really appropriate for Stanford. You know, I went to Stanford twice, once in the 80s and once in the 90s, or 70s and 80s. And you know, the classes here are rigorous. There's really academic rigor here, I happen to know. And the classes that they do for ROTC, there's just no comparison. There's just, how can you give units to these people? It just doesn't belong. That's I think the one thing that sinks it is that there's no intellectual rigor in these ROTC classes. And then I was listening on the radio coming here, KZSU. They were the candidates for student office, and they were talking about it. And apparently, their number one concern is that for the LGBT community, that the military is sort of antithetical to them. And so for our Stanford's feeling of inclusiveness, we think that maybe the ROTC doesn't belong here. But that's not the real reason. ROTC doesn't belong here, period. Aside from the fact that it's not presumed to be correct for Stanford. So I just wanted to mention that. I'm against ROTC here, and against the military, in addition.
Questions? Anyone?
Well, there's another argument on the part of the military side of ROTC that it's, sorry, that the ROTC's presence will kind of bring civilians and military, who represent the military together, because civilians don't have knowledge about what the military is all about. That's what they're saying. Can you comment on that?
Let me say something about that. Do they have a chess club on campus?
I have no idea.
See? Would that help you learn to play chess? Probably not, huh? But the point is that it doesn't foster any kind of community spirit amongst the regular students and the ROTC students, what it does is it trains military officers to become part of the military, and that's the purpose of it. There's no other purpose, no community purpose or anything like that.
I would like to add, if I can make a comparison with that argument to the School of the Americas, which is called something else right now. But it's essentially, we train the officer class of South America, Latin America, and good police measures. Well, that's the official word, but invariably, the officers graduate from the school. It's located in Georgia now. And they go to their own countries and they become leaders of the coups that happen down there. And they become the people who are carrying out massacres. And they become the liaison of the Pentagon with the local power structure, military power structure in their host countries. And so I think this is a false argument entirely.
Father Roy Bourgeois, who was a lieutenant junior grade in the U.S. Navy, who I believe he went to ROTC at Tulane University. He was a missionary, a Marino missionary in Bolivia, and he had to leave the country because some of these people who were trained at the School of the Americas put a death warrant out on him. And was one of the, then when the nuns were killed in Nicaragua and some other places, that's when he started the School of the Americas. He went to
That's
the
when he
Marino
stepped the
powers
oppositional
that be
group.
and said, we got to stop this. So ROTC at Stanford may not be as crucial or as deadly as the School of the Americas, now known as the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Studies. WISP is what it comes out to. I think they're trying to whisk the whole thing under the rug myself, but what do I know? But anyway, I think it's a small item in the overall program. When was that you was talking about kindergarten? Yeah, because there is a concept known as universal military training, and it starts in your schools and stuff. Stuff like ROTC brings it to the surface. So that's the whole thing. It's not just some benign program that the military does. A lot of these same arguments against it was used when Jerry Brown was trying to put a military school in the Oakland School District, and
Questions? Anyone else? I have one if no one else. So, I'm interested, often people try and separate the purposes to which the military is being put by, at least at the very top politicians, from the military as an institution, and say that while we can all, criticize what the politicians are using our military for, they would say we shouldn't criticize the military itself. But I feel like maybe there's something about the military as an institution that opens itself up to criticism, irrespective of the political decisions that get made about how it's used. Would you agree that there's something to be said for that?
I would say our founding fathers recognized that in their fear of a standing army. We've had a standing army essentially from World War II. Yeah, it was disbanded after World War II, but it was quickly resurrected because the enemy was already in place. The Cold War was all about creating an enemy. And there it was. And it's getting
because those founding fathers saw what it was like in European countries where they had standing armies, where they had professional soldiers, where they had a professional officer class. They never wanted that to happen here. They wanted to be a volunteer force to defend the country from foreign attacks. When's the last time we had I guess in a way you might say 9/11 was a foreign attack, but those guys were all from Saudi Arabia.
I came in from Afghanistan.
Well, I would say 1812, because
Yeah, less
I mean,
zombies.
well, like what I think the relevant question is, when has there been a foreign attack that an army would have been useful to defend
Right.
against? I mean, 9/11 is clearly out, and most people then would say, oh well, you're forgetting about Pearl Harbor, but Hawaii wasn't even a state until it was 1959. So at the time it had, it was a imperial colony of the United States that had the
Yeah.
same status as like the Philippines or Guam. We just happened to turn Hawaii into a state later. So what the actual borders of the United States are concerned is, the British-American War.
And after the Spanish-American War, we did engineer the overthrow of Queen Liliuokalani.
Yes, yes.
Hawaii,
Not to be
Hawaii,
forgotten. Not to be
much as
forgotten.
we did the progressive government of the Philippines after the Spanish-American War. We sent the 9th and 10th Cavalry units and the 26th Infantry to the Philippines to destroy the Philippine Republic. It just so happens that all three of those units were black troops. And they sent them there because there's a lot of negritos in the Philippines. So
Why don't we take a break and have a listen to, we can just continue the discussion after, but there's a short audio message that the author David Swanson, who wrote War is a Lie, and he used to be press secretary for Dennis Kucinich. He's got a history in politics and communications, and he's actually a really good writer, and that's where he's making his name now. Anyway, he's in Afghanistan at the moment on a research mission, and just to find out, a research trip, just to find out what's happening on the ground. And only about, I guess, 8 hours ago, he recorded a short message addressed to the Stanford community. We'll certainly make it available on the website, but I thought we might have a listen now.
Hi, this is David Swanson on April 5th, 2011 in Kabul, Afghanistan.